Hi, my name is Neil Locke, and I'm a Customer Engineering Manager at Google Cloud. I have been working in and with the cloud for the last 6 or 7 years of my life, and most recently, my role has involved helping startups and digital native businesses work out how to choose which products and services are most appropriate for them at their current stage of their journey. I do have a history in startups. A long time ago now, I left university to join what was then a five-person company as their first engineer. The company was called Money Saving Expert, and it's one of the UK's leading financial advice websites. I took their MVP from very small size to the company that was eventually acquired in 2012 for just about £100 million. During that journey, I helped develop features, products, and build new and different ways of thinking to allow the company to eventually be acquired. After that, I left and founded my own company in which I built the MVP. I took that company and we went through Y Combinator over in Silicon Valley. And some of the tips and advice I give today has been taken from some of the sessions that we had there. Anyway, that's enough about me. Let's get started. So initially, I was asked to do a presentation on design sprints. Design sprints and the concept of design sprint was born in around 2007 out of Google Ventures. An idea was found because back then, Jake, who worked at Google Ventures as a partner, would often go into startups and hear about stories where companies may have been slowing down a little bit. They weren't able to release with the same velocity. They were struggling, and that is often the way. And at today's journey, we're going to cover some of those topics. The difference and why I thought the design sprint process is slightly incorrect for the audience that we have here today is that back then he was talking about what in today's terms would be a Series C type company. There'd be 10, 15, 20, 100 people working for those companies. And their problems are very different to the audience I think we have here. Maybe, and I believe we have an audience where you have a co-founder, maybe one or two developers, but not a team that big. I'm going to take some of his ideas and talk through how you can use them as you build your product. But I do recommend taking some time to read or listen to that audiobook. On this slide, I list a couple of other books that are great reads and will be covered in slides as I go through this presentation. The Lean Startup by Eric Ries talks about how you build iterations of your product in a build, measure, learn type hypothesis. And Design Thinking by Tim Brown takes the user at heart and builds products focused on how and what is best for the consumer and the user. All three of these books and these ideologies, methodologies, are centerpinned by the concept of the user. And today's session, if you take away one thing, it is the focus of the user. So I've said MVP a few times now, and I am aware you may not know what that means. MVP is the minimum viable product. It's just enough features to be usable by early customers who can then provide feedback for future product development. A focus on releasing an MVP means that you're freeing up development cycles. You're not doing and building things that may not be wanted. And development cycles, developers, your time is valuable. And the quicker you can understand what your users want, and the quicker you can figure out if you're driving in the right direction, the better. And that is why you want to start in the smallest possible way. Now, initially, I'm going to talk about version 0.00001, the first iteration of your product. I will cover a little bit about how you take that from 0.001 to 0.002 and 3, 4, and some of the mechanisms to go for. But to begin with, we're going to talk about that first iteration. I also want to talk about product market fit, because I think it's key to understand as a startup founder what product market fit is. You achieve product market, or you have achieved product market fit when your users are buying or selling interacting, telling others about your product in a large enough number to sustain growth, become profitability. Ultimately, your business is succeeding without you necessarily having to push that forward. Getting product market fit or getting towards product market fit is hard. It takes time, and it takes a lot of time. And the reason why we take, or I'm talking about taking you on an MVP journey, is it's almost impossible you will hit product market fit with your first iteration of your product. And if you do, you've probably taken too much time to do what you need to do. A lot of companies believe they have product market fit and they start to scale, or a lot of startups believe they have that and they start to scale and they start to think they have this product, but they don't. Trust me, it takes a long time. When you are going through this journey of building your MVP and working towards product market fit, you need to ensure you understand what you're driving for. Retention, growth, and engagement. And these are ideas that came out of Meta, who talked about how they look at product market fit. No different for a large organization or a small organization. So today, I'm going to start with an analogy. And I've done this presentation before, and probably a few of you will have seen the scenario of you have a scooter, and the scooter becomes a bike, and the bike becomes a car, all trying to demonstrate how an MVP forms over time. I'm not going to use that example. I'm a Brit. I like drinking tea. And I think the concept and the history and the evolution of tea through the ages shines another light on how to reach, how products have been evolved. Look, there's no CEO of tea, right? There's nobody out there at the top that said, define the path of tea. But I'm going to take you back thousands of years to a situation where someone in China figured out that if you added tea leaves to hot water, the taste was nicer. And they would have shared that message to others, and others enjoyed it. And those people would have shared that message to others, and others enjoyed it. And all of a sudden, people are drinking tea, and tea has been born, and that they have found, to an extent, product market fit. Now, the reason I want to drill down into this example is there were byproducts of this. The teapot, for example. Now, the teapot was initially created because someone realized that the flavors of the tea in the brewing process, if you use the teapot, would stay and would be better. It would taste nicer. There was an audience that realized they could make things better by using a teapot. And then we sailed across the ocean, and the teapot in the UK, for example, was built as a bit of a status symbol for royalty. The wealthy had teapot, different audience, different users. And as you think about this analogy, you can think how that might correlate to what you're doing now and how businesses are formed now. But necessarily, no one thought when they had these tea leaves that we would have teapots and the way we drink tea today. And one final kind of journey on the tea, which I think is quite interesting when I was oddly geeking out about how to find out about the tea bag, a perfect example of a product that was built or created as a byproduct. It wasn't meant to be created. Someone at some point wanted to ship tea leaves from one place to another, and they put them in this bag. And when the person that received it got the bag, they put it in the water because they thought the tea bag was designed to act as, instead of the diffuser in the tea, and it holds the tea in. But no, it was designed as a way to transport the tea leaves. When it got there, it was supposed to have been used as everyone had used it before. All of a sudden, a new way of drinking tea has been created through it was an experiment. The purpose wasn't there. And the reason why I'm kind of drilling into this was all of a sudden something has been created through trial and error and the users of this product, and it's grown and grown. And now, obviously, we have thousands of different flavors, millions of productions of teapots. Like, the growth of this as an idea is massive, but one central theme around the journey of tea is the consumers of that, the users, how over time processes have changed, but the users have grown and people have worked and built different solutions. Okay, I'm going to move away from T analogies and again drill down on the user. I said I would. If you go back 24 years ago when Google was created, and just a few years old, Larry Page, one of the founders, wrote tenets. And one of the tenets he wrote that would stick true and should always hold true is the need to focus on the user. If you focus on your user, all else will follow, was a quote or a statement that they adhered to. And he also carried on in subsequent sessions to talk about there is no substitute. You cannot substitute personally watching and listening to real people. And the reason why, as a startup founder, through to owner of a corporate bank, whatever it is, you must listen to what your users want. If you are guessing what they want and not in communication, the likelihood is you will get things wrong. So, who is your user? First of all, everyone is not your user. And you should think away from that situation as soon as possible. Audacious, like 10x thinking of saying, I want everyone to be a consumer of my product is not helpful in any stage of the growth of your organization. You need to be specific. You need to narrow down right now, and especially when you're building version 0001, is who are my first 5, 10, 50 users. And the reason why you need to know that, because you're going to need to speak to them. You're going to need to listen to them. You're going to need to engage with them. And if you don't know who they are and why they would want to use your product, you're going to have a problem there. So spend time thinking about who you would like to be a user of your product and why they are a specific user of your product. And just to be clear, you as a founder are not your user. A lot of companies, and you'll hear this, founders have been, best startups are created where the founder has scratched their own itch. They're solving their own problem. And that may be the case. But very rapidly, what you need to do as founder is find more people who resemble you, who act like you, who have the same problem as you, but it's not you. If back to that product market fit cycle I talked about a little while, you may think there are a lot of yous, and you may believe that a lot of people share the same problem as you. But if you can't find them, then maybe you are wrong in your analysis of what the problem is. And maybe you are right in a small component of what you think the problem is. But those people, unless you find them, if no one else validates that journey, no, you're probably not going to find product market fit. I should also say your friends, your family, they're probably not your users either. Some of them may be. Some of them may have traits of your users, but be careful because those users, they tend to be too nice to you and they tend to tell you what you want to hear because they don't want to upset you. They're aware of the pain and the challenges that you're going through as you build your startup, and they don't want to be the person that says, yeah, I don't think what you're doing is correct. So they may sugarcoat, they may make what you say or what you're doing feel and be better. And one other thing to be careful of, and this is a bit of a weird one because I want to stress it, as you go through your journey, you will probably fairly rapidly find some super users, people that really, really, really love your product, right? They really love what you do. And you will almost certainly love them back. You were like, I'm going to listen to you. You're the person that I dream. You're another one of me. The risk of these people is you can get into a bit of an echo chamber, and actually they are validating your idea. But unless you have hundreds of these people, super users that are the same, you run the same trap of you not being your user. And one of the fears that you get if you listen to that one specific super user and you do what they say, you end up building what not the average user of your product wants, because the average user is unlikely to be a super user, is unlikely to be you. So be careful of those people that tell you everything and really want to make you feel like you're building for them, because you now have to be completely sure that they reflect the common audience. So I talked a little bit about the users of your product and finding out who they are. Try to build it in a doc, or at least be able to articulate what they look like, because as we come about trying to figure out what your version 0001 is, you're going to have to reference a subset of those users, and you're going to reference them to be able to build a goal and some measurable metrics to go alongside it. What you're going to do is your users that you've discussed and you found out who they should be, or you have an idea of what they should be, you're going to focus on a small set of those, and you're going to drill down into their highest order problem. What is the biggest problem that they have, and ignore everything else until later. I mean, maybe put it in a backlog, put it in a spreadsheet somewhere, but ultimately you're going to ignore the rest for a later point. And then what you're going to do is take their highest order problem and figure out the quickest and easiest way to move one step forward to understand a little bit more about how you would solve the problem for them. You don't necessarily have to fix the whole of their problem. What is a small step that will allow me to validate that their highest problem is actually a thing, and or invalidate it? Maybe it isn't correct. So we need to move forward. And this little bit of work, whatever the smallest thing you can do, is just a base to iterate from. A starting point. Nothing special about this in any sort of way. To drill down a tiny bit more on that, could be a form, it could be a splash page that has an email address on it. Register now and find out more. You'd have seen these websites where they alpha version register, and it makes it look like the website or the product may exist. Some of these are literally a way for the startup founders to understand, firstly, that if there is a user that was prepared to put their email address in to find out a little bit about the thing that they're creating, well, that's a good indicator that someone has that problem. And secondly, if you remember earlier, I talked about being able to watch and listen. All of a sudden, you now have a pool of users that you can potentially reach out to. That, in its essence, a small base could be your MVP version 0001. Now, as you go through this journey, what you want to be able to do, and as we talk about version 002 and onwards, you're going to want to have a way to measure the success of each iteration you use. My suggestion, and others before, use the SMART methodology. Make it specific. What the thing you are doing, what is it? How are you going to measure it? Is it achievable? Is it relevant? And is it time bound? And whatever feature or product you release, you should be able to write a couple of words or a sentence to explain how you are going to cover each of those points. And as you build out your MVP, you may want to think about what the goal is for that release. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about a splash page where someone registered for an email address. Your goal for that MVP could be customer acquisition. And it's pretty obvious there when you launch version 001, the specificity is, I want to get a group of users who are interested in my product, and I'm going to measure that by X amount of signups, and this is over the period of Y time, and I believe this is achievable. Helps drive that product market fit cycle that we talked about and goals, but in the same time, it's time bound and time boxed. Sounds pretty simple, right? Well, the whole point of this is your MVP, your 0001, you should be able to build fast. And by fast, we're talking about weeks, days, definitely not months. This baseline, as I've said, it could be a landing page, it could be a form, right? Simple functionality, and you've taken that small set of users and their highest problem, and you've focused on that. And how do I move forward to understand more about that and move my business forward? Your MVP, this iteration, is not, should not be special. If it's special, you've gone too far. So version 002, or the next iteration, it's kind of a bit of a rinse and repeat here, right? You take, same as before, the next most important thing and what the least amount of work we need to do to get there. And you carry on that cycle, carry it on. You're learning each time, you're moving forward in a sequence of trials and iterations to understand and to prove or disprove hypotheses that you may have about growing your startup. Now, I'm going to take a bit of an anecdote and a breather here because I have a lot of people that will come to me, and I've had this experience personally where someone would say, "Oh, yeah, but you're releasing too much. The code quality, it's horrible, or you're skimping at things. You're not focusing on the right thing. It would actually have been better had you have done this the right way in the first place." Now, there's two things that I can cover on this topic. One, I remember a developer saying to me, "Oh, this code that I'm looking at now, it's really horrible. Why did you write it like that? Why is it so inelegant? You could have structured it better. You could have thought about this. What does this do?" And my answer to them was, well, at the time, one, I didn't have the time to look at those things. We were always iterating quickly. We were focusing on the next release and seeing if that was the right thing to do. And maybe we did create spaghetti code, but that spaghetti code or the messy code that we created ultimately has meant that we have moved forward to get closer to product market fit, to be able to be us, to be in a position where I can now hire you and the team that's around you, and now your problem or the problem of the team is very different, and scalability, elegant code, how we build a wider team is a different problem statement to what I had when I was building that first or very early situations of this product. I didn't have the ability or time to sit there and think a lot about how I could build this elegantly because I just didn't know it was going to succeed. We didn't know as a team whether it was going to succeed. So we took the minimum way to do that. I will caveat this: if you are dealing with customer personal information or financial information or anything that is risky, I'm not saying shortcut them. Make sure you are following the standards and the guidance on that. I'm saying, even as the developer of the product, you need to be sitting there thinking, how can I do this the smallest way possible? The other thing about going from, say, version 1 to 2 to 5 to 10, and the reason why you want to have the smallest iteration, again, I remember at Money Saving Expert, we would launch products and features, and we would have a messages come in that were like, why did you not do this? Or you should have done this. Why did you not think about doing that? Now, initially, I thought, I took offense, right? It's like, oh, well, I should have thought about that. Why did I not think about that? We definitely should have done that. But the learning of that cycle was actually those users loved the product that we had created and were asking for more. And you never know, there was 10 or 20, 100 different suggestions. Some of those others wouldn't have wanted. And that feedback loop of listening and watching our users meant that we released something, we listened, we learned, we'd added those features that were the next most important thing. We could have not released anything and spent the next months building the thing that all the people had said that we should have had an iteration one, and actually most of it wouldn't have been valuable or useful to the consumers. Okay, so I'm aware that I have given a bit of an idealistic view of moving from stage that launch version 001 to future iterations. I know it's not as simple as I've just made it sound. And I know that's why Jake wrote a book, for example, on the design sprint, because inevitably what happens as as your business grows and you add more functionality, you add more people, things slow down. And it's it's almost certainly going to happen to you. And what I'm going to talk about now is a little bit of a mechanism that you may consider implementing if you see that happening, or maybe when you see that happening. Typically, one of the reasons why things slow down is as you grow, you as a co-founder have views of how way to shape your product. You may hire a designer, you may hire developers, and at that point you have multiple different people who have views on how things work. And potentially those views are the people that you've hired. Again, you've got to be mindful that they should be the views of your users, but inevitably things get to a point where people become a little bit disenfranchised. They don't think that their work is going out. They don't think they're doing the things that their users want. And this suggestion is a way that we went through Y Combinator and how to kind of potentially fix and look at future cycles and releases. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to have this concept of a cycle length, the period of time where work is focused. That needs to be short. If you're a website, it's probably a couple of weeks. And during that, you're going to be able to release a certain amount of functionality. At the beginning of those cycles, you're going to have a couple of bits of work to do. You're going to have to decide on the focus of what this 2 week period is going to be. And if you go back to that product metric PMF slide I talked about earlier, maybe the focus of the next couple of weeks is increasing new users. Everything that we're going to do is going to focus on increasing new users, or everything that we're going to do is going to focus on engaging and keeping those new users on site. And as you build out the ideas of how that may work, it has to be able to track down to one of those metrics and what you've specified the 2 weeks should be. You're then going to come together as a team and you're all going to come with ideas of how you believe you can solve those problems, how you can bring user evidence to solve it, but ultimately probably stick it, post-it notes on wall. These are our ideas. Everyone is in the room to do that. Now, here is the interesting bit, and here is how things shift over the period of a few weeks in this process. What's going to next happen is your developers are going to try and size this right in front of everyone else. They're going to take these tickets and they're going to size them, maybe with t-shirt sizing. And the thing that you want to say is you want to say, I can do, for example, one large topic or one large ticket in the period of a cycle. I can do the team or you or the team, however big, can do 4 mediums and 8 smalls. You're going to look at a small on the board and you're going to go around and you're going to say, what's the smallest thing that we've got? You're going to say that, and comfortably you'll say, I could do 8 of these, for example. The sizings is up to you. The key thing that you want to be able to say is anything larger than a large, it's not possible, right? You can't do it. We're not going to be able to do it in this cycle. Now, the reason you want to do this is on the first few weeks, there will be people that bring things that are deemed to be extra large into the room, and they will walk away without their idea moving forward. If they're clever, and historically this is always the case, pretty rapidly they will say, I know that last week there was 4 smalls and 1 medium that went through, so I'm gonna figure out how I make my XL into smalls because I know I can progress forward. And they will learn the art of taking their idea and shrink it down into smalls, into M's, because otherwise they're not moving their idea forward. And they are working out the art of articulating what the minimum of their idea could be in order for it to get done. It becomes it was almost certainly become a situation where those ideas will be shrunk down to 2 or 3 smalls, and someone can build that roadmap, and their Excel becomes implemented over a period of time. And actually, in taking that approach, that idea that was an Excel that I think everyone possibly thought was a great idea may be disproved in one cycle, because actually the metrics that we get back didn't show what the idea was. Couple of points on this process. The ideas that you write down on the board have to have a clear spec and the measurements of success. How are you going to measure this thing works, and what is the specification? When you walk away from this brainstorming session, the developers should be pretty much clear of what is going on. If the talk goes, I'm not sure if this is a small or a medium, the spec is unclear, and it's probably a medium. So be careful about ensuring the spec, and ultimately you're striving to get to smalls whenever possible. What you probably can hear from this session is a lot of development. The development process is trial and error. You're going to move a few steps forward, you're going to find things don't work, you're going to go back. You're going to move a few steps forward, you're going to find something works, you're going to try a little bit more on top of that, and that doesn't work, right? You're backwards, forwards, you're only moving forward in small increments, but you're not wasting huge amounts of time trying to find this thing that you don't know is going to work. Because if you use that hypothesis and you move forward, learn something, and it doesn't work and move back, well, you're always iterating forward rather than spending months and months building on top and layers that could all go wrong at the same time. So I've talked hopefully about the concept of an MVP, the smallest iteration. I've talked about how you get closer to product market fit. I haven't talked much about where Google and some of the sessions that we have on Startup School come in, but actually, there are some sessions that will be valuable to you. Things like SEO, for example, search engine optimization. One of your MVP goals could be to drive more users to your website, and SEO could be the answer to that problem. Ads, for example, maybe you're struggling to find your users and you could look at using ads. Be mindful that paying for users, unless it's part of your cycle and you understand the cost of that, may not help you drive product market fit, because your acquiring mechanism is paid for, and aspirationally you don't want to always be acquiring by paying for. But during those sessions that we have in the coming weeks, you can dive into a couple more of these ideas. Also, on pretty much my first couple of slides, I talked about how your MVP, your version 0001, could be a splash page. Well, it could be a form. Right? You could use Workspace, you could set up a Google Sheet, you could put a form in front of it, ask people to register to find out more, ask people to register. Behind the scenes, you may start doing work and gluing things together, but there's zero work or very little work to get something out there to start understanding if that's how your users or what your hypothesis is. If you want to take it to the next step, Google have things like AppSheet, which allows, through a no code solution, you to build applications, automate processes. You don't need to have a developer on site paying for them to build out some of those early iterations of your business. And then finally, if you do hire a developer or you have a group of developers, we have a session coming up on Firebase, and I fully recommend something like Firebase. Firebase allows you to develop your application and push it into the cloud, has databases, completely serverless, without you needing to worry about the underlying infrastructure that powers it. I have spoken to a number of startups over the last few years, and those startups, some of them, they will tell me how their developer, they said it was more expensive to use things like Firebase, and actually he could do it and he could host it, and he showed me it's like another $5 a month than we would have to pay for to use something like Firebase. Now, my answer to almost all of them is, you're hiring your developer to build your product, right? You're not hiring your developer to host your product, to scale, to look after the database. That's something else, right? That's not your problem. And in the grand scheme of things, that extra $5 a month or whatever it might be, focusing their attention on cutting the code, writing your actual business logic is far, far, far more important than hosting the website themselves. They are spending their time on the wrong thing. So this is the point where I come to wrap up. And on my final slide, I'm bringing two quotes, which hopefully over the period of the last 30 or 35 minutes, you've heard me talk about quite a few times. On the left, Paul Graham, Y Combinator co-founder. It's better to have 100 people love you than a million people that sort of love you, sort of like you. What do they mean by that? What does he mean by that? Well, if 100 people love you, they will evangelize you. They will come back. They will tell people about you. They will ensure that your product grows. If a million people sort of like you, well, they might not tell anyone else. And if someone else comes out with a thing that's slightly better than yours, they might go to there, right? You haven't got that loyalty and you're not helping move towards product market fit. And the other one, Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn. If you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. You should be. You should not fall in love with your MVP. You should be getting it out as quickly as possible to iterate, to grow, to carry on learning and improving the product that you're creating. I hope you found this session useful, and be sure to tune in to some of the others we've got coming up. Others, as I mentioned earlier, include SEO, ads, and some technical topics covering how to build your application on Firebase, how to structure your database, maybe start looking at machine learning in your application. Thank you for joining us, and good luck with your startup.